I recently discovered that my newlywed wife, Claire, has a sexually transmitted disease, STD. The irony is, she always insisted on being a traditional girl, claiming to be a virgin and having never been in a relationship before our marriage. I'm completely lost and don't know how to face this situation. Claire is 24 years old, and I, Patrick, am 27. When I first met Claire, I was captivated by her pure and innocent aura. It was impossible to look away. On every date, she was shy and demure. We never held hands for more than a few seconds, and her gaze rarely met mine for longer than a few fleeting moments. This innocent shyness made me feel like I was falling for someone truly special, someone I could trust and respect completely. Now, Claire can't even meet my eyes. She sits there, her hand trembling as she holds the test result, her lips moving but unable to form words. Every time she tries to speak, her voice catches, as if choked by shame and fear. The silence between us suffocates the room, and I feel a wave of disappointment washing over me. The woman I married, the woman who promised a lifetime of happiness, is hiding something far greater than I could ever imagine. Finally, I can't take it anymore. I stand up, trying to stay calm, but my voice betrays my composure, coming out harsh and cold. Claire, what else are you keeping from me? It's best you tell me everything. No more beating around the bush. If there's an explanation, tell me now. Maybe I can be lenient. I look directly at Claire, searching for a glimmer of sincerity in her eyes, but she only lowers her head, avoiding my gaze. The silence is so intense I can hear her breathing, further fueling my confusion and frustration. I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on her, but right now I have no other choice. My mind is a whirlwind of anger and worry. Questions keep swirling in my head, and Claire's silence only intensifies my impatience. But I also realize that if I keep this up, I'll never get answers. She's terrified, and I am too. We're both drowning in this chaos. I take a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. Then I bend down and gently take Claire's hand, feeling its trembling. My eyes soften, and my voice becomes gentler, despite the turmoil within. Claire, I say softly, I know this is difficult for you, and I apologize if I'm making you feel pressured, but I need you to share this with me. Whatever it is, no matter how bad it might be, I need to know the truth. We promised to be together, and I'm willing to forgive, if you can be honest with me. I look into Claire's eyes, waiting for her reaction. For the first time since the long silence, Claire slowly lifts her head, her eyes red-rimmed, looking at me with the pain she's been trying to conceal for so long. After a tense, hesitant pause, Claire takes a deep breath. She's still trembling, her red eyes meeting mine with visible hesitation. I hold her hand a little tighter, hoping it will give her some comfort, at least enough courage to start sharing. Claire moves her lips, her eyes darting away from mine, as if seeking escape from the truth about to unfold. Patrick, I don't know where to start, Claire says, her voice raspy. I didn't mean to hide it from you, but there are some things from the past that I couldn't tell you. I stay silent, patiently waiting. This is the moment I know the truth will be revealed. My heart beats faster, but I try to keep my voice gentle. Just tell me, I'm here, I say, my eyes fixed on Claire, encouraging her to open up. Claire hesitates, her hands shaking in mine, as if the guilt is slowly suffocating her. Finally, after an agonizing silence, she begins to speak. Claire falters, her eyes still avoiding mine, her voice a soft whisper, as if merely recalling the past is painful enough. Before I met you, there was a small dance party I went to. Claire starts, her hands trembling in mine. That night was when I broke my own boundaries between yes and no, between what I thought I would uphold and what I did. I sit silently, unsure what's coming, but each word she speaks pushes my heart further down. There was a guy. He looked like a real player, Claire continues, her voice softening. At first, I didn't pay attention to him, I just tried to ignore him, but somehow, he made me feel interesting. I thought it was just a game, something harmless. He introduced himself as Mark. I'd guess he was around my age then, maybe 22. Claire pauses for a moment, then continues. Initially, I didn't intend to let things go that far, just talking, some flirting. But then Mark, he had this really captivating way of speaking, making me feel special. I felt noticed, valued, and I let my ego get swept up in his sweet talk. I freeze, Claire's words echoing in the quiet of the room, each syllable pulling me further away from the image of the pure and reserved girl I thought I knew. What happened, I ask, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the ache in my heart. Claire swallows, her gaze fixed on the floor. That night, I couldn't control myself. Mark crossed every boundary I had set for myself. I made a mistake, Patrick. I didn't mean to hide it from you, but I was too ashamed. I'm not who you thought I was, not the girl I created an image of in front of you. Claire's words reverberate in my mind. It turns out she had shattered all the boundaries she promised to keep. I sit there, lost in thought, unable to speak. Claire's confession is like a blow to my mind, leaving me drowning in disappointment and hurt. The image of the pure, innocent girl I once believed in is crumbling away. Claire, with her remorseful eyes, continues her story, as if by not saying it all, she will remain haunted by what happened. The next morning, when I woke up, Claire whispers, her voice catching, Mark was gone. No note, no trace, as if he had never existed. At that moment, I felt empty, as if I had been abandoned after a night of mistakes. I blamed myself for being too easy, too naive to believe his sweet words. I still sit motionless, trying to process everything. Bitterness rises in my chest, but I can't find the words to say anything. Claire looks at me, her eyes glistening, her voice trembling as she speaks. Not long after that, I found out I was pregnant, Claire says, her eyes dropping, her hands clutching each other tightly. I was too young to be a mother, too terrified to face this. I didn't know what to do, and I made the wrong choice. I decided to terminate the pregnancy. I'm stunned, a wave of shock washing over me. Everything spins around me, Claire's confession like a stormy wave pulling me under, and I don't know how to face it. The woman I love, who I thought was pure and innocent, is now admitting something I could never have imagined. I can't utter a word. My whole body feels numb, as if all my emotions are submerged in chaos and pain. I want to say something, but my throat closes up and shock takes over my mind. Claire lowers her head, no longer daring to meet my eyes. I know I was wrong, Patrick. I can't change the past. I don't know what to do anymore. I sit there, feeling like I'm facing an insurmountable wall. How can I face this truth? What I knew about Claire, about the woman I married, is now just fragments of what I once believed. I sit there paralyzed, all feeling in my body seeming to freeze. A silence stretches between us, neither of us speaking. After a while, in a trembling voice, I ask, "Is there anything else, Claire?" Claire looks up, her eyes red and teary. She hesitates as if deciding whether to continue, but then, like a dam breaking, she continues to confess. Not long after I terminated the pregnancy, I met you, Patrick, she says, her voice filled with emotion. You were like a ray of sunshine entering my life, warming me and making me believe that I could start over. You were so kind, so loving towards me, and I truly thought things were getting back on track. I thought I could bury the past. She stops, looking at me with a plea in her eyes, but I don't say anything. I just wait for her to continue, feeling like my heart is being squeezed. But then, one day while I was at home, Mark showed up again, Claire continues, her voice trembling. He came, saying loving things to me, as if he had never disappeared. At first I refused. Truly, I tried, Patrick. I thought I had gotten over him, that he was just the past. But Mark was like a magnet. The harder I tried to break free, the more I felt myself being pulled closer. I couldn't escape his pull. She sobs, but I remain silent, trying to keep myself from breaking. I listen, each word like a knife cutting into my heart. Mark kept coming to see me, and each time, he came only for the physical, Claire admits, her voice catching in her sobs. He didn't love me, Patrick. Each time I knew I was making a mistake, but I couldn't stop. I betrayed you, and I know I don't deserve you. I feel the world spinning around me, all the faith, all the hope I had in Claire evaporating. I thought Claire was the only person I could trust, but it turns out I was a fool, swept up in a fabricated story, a game she created herself. Anger and pain rise within me, but I can't react. I just sit there, speechless, unsure how to face this. Claire, the woman I loved, the woman I thought would build a future with me, has now become the worst nightmare I've ever faced. I feel like the world is collapsing around me. Everything blurs, and I'm left feeling suffocated. Claire's confession echoes in my head, each word, each sentence like a dagger piercing my heart. I lower my head, no longer looking at Claire. The reality is too brutal to face right now. After a moment, I try to regain my composure, my voice becoming cold and distant. I need some time to think, Claire, I say heavily, as if it takes great effort to utter these words. You should go to sleep first. Claire looks at me, her eyes red and worried. But I can't face her right now. I release her hand, feeling like I've let go of a part of myself, and stand up. Without another word, I walk out of the room, feeling the air in the room becoming suffocating, forcing me to go outside for air. I step outside, feeling the cool night breeze on my face, but it doesn't alleviate the pain that's surging inside me. I lean against the railing, trying to take deep breaths to calm down, but Claire's confessions keep swirling in my head, not giving me a moment's peace. She was honest with me, that much is clear. But it's undeniable that what Claire did wasn't just a mistake, it was an unforgivable betrayal. She hid her past from me, let Mark back into her life, and worst of all, she gave in to physical encounters with him. I can't stop asking myself, was everything I shared with Claire real? Our moments of happiness, our promises for the future, were they all just a lie? I thought I knew Claire, but maybe I never truly did. Tonight, the cold wind can't extinguish the pain within me. Claire was honest, but her honesty reveals too much betrayal, too much that I'm not ready to face. She's made me feel like a fool, and now I have to decide whether I can forgive her and move on. But honestly, I'm not sure I have the strength to do it anymore. I stand there, lost in thought, the cold night air not calming the turmoil in my heart. Thoughts intertwine, mixing pity with betrayal, preventing me from finding peace. Eventually I sigh, reminding myself I can't stay here forever, and slowly turn back inside. When I enter, I see Claire asleep on the couch, huddled up in the chill of the late night. She didn't go to bed, but just stayed there, her eyes puffy from crying. Seeing her like that, I can't help but feel a flicker of pity. She's clearly in pain, but a part of me is still filled with resentment. Resentment for what she did, and resentment that I still love her, despite the fact that what she did should have made me leave long ago. I gently tuck a blanket around Claire, shielding her from the cold. It seems like a simple gesture, but my heart is tormented. Then, I walk into the bedroom, stand there for a moment, looking around. All the furniture, the things we shared, suddenly feel alien. I don't know what to do. Everything seems different, but I'm still stuck in a whirlwind of emotions. My hands unconsciously reach for the suitcase, pull it out in the middle of the room, and start packing. I don't think much, just react instinctively, as if leaving is the only thing I can do to escape this pain. But as I pull the suitcase out, seeing Claire huddled on the couch, a wave of emotions washes over me. I stand there, unable to leave. She's in crisis, and I can't deny that. Even though Claire hurt me, she's suffering her own pain. Would it be wrong to leave right now? To leave her alone, amidst this chaos? My heart is filled with misery. I stand there, my hand gripping the suitcase handle, but then I let go. Sighing, I decide to put the suitcase away, not leave tonight. Instead, I walk into the bathroom. The cold water from the shower hits me in waves, but no matter how cold it is, it can't extinguish the chill in my heart right now. I just stand there, letting the water flow over me, but the feeling of emptiness and exhaustion remains. The next morning, as the soft light filters through the window, the world seems to awaken. And so does Claire. She slowly wakes up, feeling tired and heavy after a long night of tears and tension. Looking around, Claire sees me dozing off on the opposite chair, my face clearly reflecting the fatigue and worry of the previous night. Claire looks at me, her eyes reflecting remorse and guilt. She doesn't want to disturb me, doesn't want to wake me up. Instead, she gets up quietly, trying not to make a sound, and walks into the bathroom to take care of her personal needs. Not long after, I wake up too. A sudden sense of panic and anxiety hits me when I don't see Claire. Dark thoughts and fear fill my mind, making me immediately get up and look for her. My heart beats fast, worried that she'll do something reckless after what happened. I walk through the apartment, rushing to each room, and finally, I breathe a sigh of relief when I see Claire standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom, brushing her teeth. The sight, though simple, makes me feel much more relieved. She didn't abandon me, and I'm not ready to abandon her either. After we both calm down, we sit down facing each other, in the quiet space of our apartment. No more accusations, no more tears, just silence and deep looks into each other's eyes. Claire lowers her head, her voice soft. Patrick, I'm really sorry, I can't turn back time, but I want us to start over. I want to do everything right from now on. I look at Claire, sensing remorse and sincerity in her eyes. I've gone through so much pain, but I can't deny that I still love her. Last night, in my darkest moments, I realized that, despite everything, I couldn't leave Claire. She made mistakes, but we both have wounds that need healing. I don't know what the future holds, Claire, I say, my voice gentle but firm, but if we really want to start over, I'm willing to try with you. Claire nods, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. We both know the path ahead won't be easy, but at least we're ready to move forward, facing difficulties together. And so we decide to give each other a second chance, to clear up any misunderstandings and start anew. In the difficult period that follows, I know that just deciding to start over isn't enough. Claire's wounds, mine, and those of our relationship are too deep. We need more than promises and forgiveness. We need action, real healing. I can't let Claire live forever in shame and guilt over what happened. The physical and emotional wounds are weighing heavily on her, and I don't want them to destroy the future we can have together. So I decide to do what a husband should do. I take Claire to seek treatment everywhere. We start seeing doctors specializing in pathology, making sure that Claire receives the best medical care. It's not just about the physical aspect. I know that overcoming this shock is also very much about her mental well-being. I want Claire to understand that, even though she made mistakes, she's still valuable and deserves to live in Yuzhuan, free from shame, free from fear of the past. At first, Claire was very worried and didn't want me to see the wounds she thought she had to hide. But I couldn't let her face this alone. Each time we enter the clinic, seeing her sitting silently, her eyes sad and anxious, I only become more determined. I hold her hand, reminding her that we're doing this together. We don't stop at medical checkups. We also start attending therapy sessions. Initially, Claire was hesitant, but I knew it was the most important step for both of us to overcome the shadows of the past. The first therapy session wasn't easy. Buried memories and emotions were rekindled, both unspoken words and unspoken pain. During those times, I had to face myself too, with the anger, the frustration, and the feeling of betrayal I had been suppressing. But with each therapy session, we began to find better ways to communicate, learning to forgive not only each other but also ourselves. Claire no longer tries to avoid or withdraw. She started opening up more, willing to face the mistakes she once thought were unforgivable. And so, day by day, little by little, we overcame this pain together. There were times when I felt tired, felt like I couldn't go on, but looking at Claire, who had become stronger, I knew that my decision was right. I didn't want Claire to live with shame, and I couldn't let this pain destroy our future. We still have a long way to go, but with each step, I know we're healing not just Claire, but our relationship as well. Time passed, and Claire gradually became happier. She no longer lived in the guilt and shame she once carried. Her smiles returned, sometimes soft, sometimes bright, as we shared peaceful moments together. That gave me some reassurance, knowing that both of our efforts weren't in vain. However, I didn't dare to completely relax, knowing that the healing process takes time. One day, while I was at work preparing for a meeting, a young man approached my desk, looking both nervous and confident. He walked over, looking at me with bright eyes. "Hello, are you the department head, right? I'm Dylan, newly hired. My boss told me to find you for work guidance." I smiled and nodded in confirmation. "Yes, I'm the department head. Nice to meet you. Dylan, let me take you to my office and introduce you to everyone." I stood up and walked with Dylan to the upper floor, guiding him on the basic procedures of the company. Dylan was around 25 years old, with a dynamic appearance and full of enthusiasm. We entered the shared workspace, where colleagues were busy with their tasks. I brought Dylan to the center of the room and called everyone's attention. "Everyone, this is Dylan, our new employee," I introduced in a friendly tone. "He just joined the company and will be working under my guidance. I hope everyone will be supportive, helping Dylan during the early stages." Dylan nodded and greeted everyone, his eyes expressing eagerness and a desire to integrate. "Hello everyone, I'm Dylan, looking forward to learning and working with all of you." I watched everyone smile in response, feeling the warm and friendly atmosphere of the workspace as usual. Dylan seemed like an approachable guy, and I hoped he would quickly adapt to the pace of work here. After finishing the introductions, I returned to my work, but I didn't forget to observe Dylan to make sure he was adapting well. Although work continued, a part of me was always thinking about Claire and everything happening at home. Time went by, Dylan quickly adapted to the work, and I gradually became closer to him. As a newcomer, Dylan was always enthusiastic, but sometimes he still struggled with grasping small details or handling complex situations. I didn't hesitate to spend time guiding and helping him. Gradually, we weren't just colleagues but also friends who could talk and share anything, from work to daily life stories. Dylan was very grateful for my support. Whenever I helped him solve a problem, he always expressed respect and gratitude. It made me feel satisfied with my job because it wasn't just about management but also about mentoring a young person like Dylan, helping him grow and develop in his career. But I also didn't forget that family was still the most important thing. With Claire, things were slowly stabilizing, but the healing process still required time and special care. I knew I couldn't just take care of her superficially, so I always tried to balance between work and family. Whenever I finished work at the company, I always tried to get home on time to spend time with Claire. We often had dinner together, talking about my workday and Claire's progress and treatment. Her smiles, although sometimes still tinged with anxiety, were starting to feel more genuine. We watched movies together, went for walks, and sometimes simply sat beside each other in silence, feeling the connection gradually returning. However, I was still constantly worried about Claire. There were nights when I watched her sleep, wondering if I was doing enough to help her overcome the wounds of the past. But then, seeing her gentle smile every morning when she woke up, I knew we were on the right track, even if this path wasn't easy. Amidst the pressures of work and family responsibilities, I realized that the most important thing was to maintain balance. Dylan was still maturing and progressing, and Claire was gradually recovering. I knew that as long as I didn't give up, things would gradually get better. Before I knew it, the end of the year was approaching, and as a thank you to my colleagues and boss for their companionship throughout the year, I decided to invite everyone to my home for a cozy meal. Claire knew about this event beforehand, and she was also excited to prepare the year-end party. We planned the meal together, from the main dishes to the desserts. Everything had to be perfect. I trusted that Claire would do everything well, as she always did. As my colleagues and boss arrived at my house one by one, I stepped out to greet everyone. A happy, intimate atmosphere enveloped the place. Everyone was excited and looking forward to it. But as soon as Claire stepped out to greet the guests, the smile on her face vanished when she saw Dylan. Their eyes locked for a moment of awkwardness. Claire looked surprised, confused, while Dylan couldn't hide his surprise at learning that Claire was my wife. It seemed like there was a past between them that I was completely unaware of. Dylan tried to stay composed, but I could sense a slight tension in the air. "Claire, this is Dylan. He just joined the company and is very energetic," I introduced, even though it wasn't necessary, because they clearly recognized each other. Claire nodded slightly, a forced smile briefly appearing on her face. "Nice to meet you all. Please come in." Not wanting to spoil the festive mood, I led my boss and colleagues into the house. Everyone couldn't help but be impressed by the cozy decoration and architecture of the house. Claire's meticulous arrangements, from the furniture to the way candles were placed, created a warm and welcoming space. Compliments flowed continuously, and I felt proud of the house and the effort Claire had put in. "Your house is so beautiful, Patrick. It's really an ideal place to welcome the new year," one colleague exclaimed. "That's right, cozy and friendly," my boss added, nodding in approval. However, I couldn't help but notice that Claire was still a little flustered after seeing Dylan as for Dylan, although he maintained a normal appearance. He occasionally glanced at Claire with an unreadable expression. There was something between them that I couldn't quite understand, but I temporarily put aside my suspicions, as the year-end party was going well. Everyone gathered around the table, starting the year-end party. Laughter and conversation filled the air, but deep down I still felt a vague unease that I couldn't fully dismiss. For the time being, I could only hope that this wouldn't affect my family life and what we had been trying to build. Dinner went smoothly, the atmosphere buzzing with laughter and New Year's greeting. Everyone raised their glasses, wishing each other a more successful new year, and all the old things, whether happy or sad, would be left behind. The food Claire prepared was praised by everyone, causing her to offer a gentle smile, although there was still a hint of awkwardness from Dylan's presence. My boss, after a few drinks, stood up and said, "Patrick, you're a great department head. I wish you and your family a happy and prosperous new year. I believe you will achieve even greater success in your work and life." Everyone nodded in agreement, and I felt a little relieved as the party came to a pleasant end. No one mentioned anything other than hopeful wishes for the future. After seeing my colleagues and boss off, I felt a little more peaceful, although a shadow of uneasiness lingered. As the door closed, I was left alone with Claire in the quiet house. Claire looked tired but tried to maintain a smile. We didn't talk much then, both understanding that the night needed peace. I walked into the kitchen and started helping Claire clean up the dishes. She looked at me, her eyes still tinged with anxiety. "You don't have to do that, Patrick. I can manage," she said softly. I smiled gently, taking the pile of dishes and walking to the sink. "It's okay, Claire, I want to help you. Cleaning up together is faster." We cleaned the kitchen together. The sound of water flowing from the sink and the clinking of dishes seemed to dispel the anxiety in my heart. Even though we didn't talk much, each other's presence in that small space brought a sense of peace. I couldn't deny that, whatever happened between Claire and Dylan in the past, I still wanted to believe we could overcome it all. When the last dishes were dried and put away, I looked at Claire, feeling a little lighter. "You did a great job tonight," I said softly. "Everyone loved the food and the atmosphere. You're amazing." Claire smiled, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Patrick. I know there have been a lot of things worrying us lately, but I'm so grateful you're always here." After cleaning up, we both went to the bedroom. Claire snuggled up in my arms. She seemed a little restless. The warmth from her body made me feel comfortable, but I could still sense that something wasn't fully resolved. Claire nestled closer to my chest, then suddenly spoke, her question taking me by surprise. "Patrick, what do you think about Dylan?" Claire asked, her voice gentle but tinged with worry. I raised an eyebrow, surprised that she was bringing up Dylan at this moment. Even though I was surprised, I didn't hesitate to answer. "I think he's a young, energetic guy who does a good job. Everything seems fine with Dylan. Why do you ask?" Claire was silent for a while. Then she sighed, holding me tighter before answering. "Patrick, it's best if you don't interact with Dylan too much. There's something I haven't told you. In middle school, I was bullied terribly by Dylan. He didn't just bother me, he hurt me emotionally to the point that I had to transfer schools." Hearing those words from Claire, I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows. I couldn't believe that Dylan, my employee, the one I helped and became close to, had a past like that. I always thought he was a positive person, but what Claire said made me reconsider. I looked down at Claire, seeing the pain and worry in her eyes. As the one who loved his wife, I understood that she needed my protection, and that was more important than anything. "I understand," I said, my voice low but firm. "If you're uncomfortable with Dylan, I'll keep my distance. I don't want anything to worry you anymore." Claire smiled gently, clearly feeling more at ease after hearing me say that. I hugged her tighter, feeling the closeness and love between us. After a long day full of events, we could finally put aside all our worries and let ourselves rest. We hugged each other and fell asleep, my heart silently promising to always protect Claire, no matter what I had to face in the future. The next morning, I walked into the office with a strange feeling. Remembering Claire's words last night, I decided to keep my distance from Dylan. It wasn't easy, as I had always been friendly and helpful towards him. But for Claire, I knew I had to change my approach. When Dylan came to see me to ask about work, I wasn't as comfortable or open as before. I answered him with short sentences, keeping my voice cold and more stern than usual. He seemed confused, obviously not understanding why I was friendly yesterday but cold today. Dylan tried to maintain professionalism, but I could see the worry in his eyes as I became more strict. "Patrick, can you elaborate on this part? Yesterday you said you would help me clarify the process." I looked at him, trying to hide my discomfort inside. "Review the documentation yourself. Dylan, I can't follow you every step of the way. You have to take responsibility for your work." Dylan furrowed his brow, trying to stay composed. "Yes, I'll try my best." It was clear he was confused, but he didn't say anything more. Dylan returned to his desk, but I saw him exchange a few words with other colleagues in the room, probably asking about my attitude. One of them, who had worked with me longer, spoke up to reassure him. "Don't worry, sometimes Patrick is just in a bad mood. Just focus on your work. Everything will be fine." Dylan nodded after hearing this, but he still had a worried look on his face. He couldn't understand why I changed my attitude so suddenly, but it didn't matter to me right now. In my heart, only one thing was clear: protecting Claire was my top priority, and if keeping my distance from Dylan was necessary to do that, I wouldn't hesitate. Throughout the workday, I continued to keep my distance from Dylan, avoiding direct communication unless absolutely necessary. Although I felt awkward, I knew I was doing the right thing for Claire, and that was all I cared about. My ignoring and sternness towards Dylan didn't just last for a day or two. Gradually, he started to feel uncomfortable and anxious, realizing that the friendly relationship between us had changed without a clear explanation. My cold attitude made Dylan increasingly confused, and finally, at the end of the day, he decided to confront me. "Patrick, can you tell me, have I done something to upset you?" Dylan asked, his voice slightly hesitant. "If I did something wrong, please tell me. I really don't want to upset you." I paused, looking at him coldly, but trying to stay calm. "Nothing," I replied tersely, not wanting to prolong the conversation. But Dylan didn't give up. He sighed, then continued, as if weighing his words carefully before speaking. "Patrick, if you know about my past with Claire, I just want to say that I'm really sorry. I didn't know she was your wife. If that's the reason why you've changed, then please forgive me." Those words shocked me, making me raise an eyebrow involuntarily, a mix of confusion and suspicion invading my mind. I turned to look at Dylan intently, maintaining a firm tone. "What did you just say? You had a relationship with Claire?" Dylan swallowed, looking awkward. "Yes, that happened a long time ago, before I knew she was your wife. I had no intention of causing trouble, and I honestly didn't think it would become an issue now, but I thought, if you knew, I should apologize directly." Anger and confusion welled up inside me. All the things Claire said last night suddenly became clear in my mind. But this, it wasn't just bullying as Claire said. The feeling of being deceived and betrayed coiled in my chest, making it hard for me to stay calm. I couldn't believe that Dylan would dare to mention this so casually, as if it was just a past mistake that could be easily overlooked. "It's clear there are a lot of things I don't know," I said, my voice deepening, but with restraint. "You better tell me everything, right now." Dylan hesitated, his eyes avoiding mine for a moment. But then, seeing my sharp gaze, he realized he had no choice. He took a deep breath, then slowly spoke, each word uttered making the atmosphere heavier. "Before, Claire wasn't the person you thought she was. She wasn't just a regular girl. Claire used to work at a nightclub, and I was one of her regular customers." Those words hit me like a shock, striking my mind directly. "Claire? A nightclub girl?" I tried to stay composed, but a feeling of dizziness and confusion suddenly surged in my chest. The images I always held of Claire, the gentle, pure woman I loved and trusted, suddenly shattered into pieces. "Is this true? Do you have any proof?" I asked, my voice raspy from trying to control the trembling. "I can't just believe your words." Dylan sighed, clearly not wanting to go this far either. But seeing my insistence on proof, he reached into his pocket for his phone. He unlocked it, scrolled through the screen, then showed me a strange Tinder account he had saved. "Here," Dylan said hesitantly. "I found it. It stopped working a few months ago, but this is Claire's account." I looked at the screen. It was a Tinder account with clear images and information belonging to Claire. She used a different name, but it wasn't hard to recognize that it was my wife. The past posts not only contained photos but also calls for working capital, openly seeking clients. The account had been inactive for a while before she decided to stop. My hand started shaking as I stared at the screen. Everything around me seemed to spin. I didn't know what to say or do at this moment. Claire's words, her promises of purity and reserve, were now blatant lies. "Claire has been lying to me all along," I muttered, my hands gripping Dylan's phone tightly. "She's been deceiving me this entire time." Dylan stood silently, saying nothing more. He knew he couldn't help more at this point. I handed the phone back to him, my heart full of shock and pain. I felt like the whole world beneath me was crumbling. Everything I trusted now was just deep betrayal. The feeling of being deceived and hurt overwhelmed me, making it impossible for me to think straight. Claire, the one I loved and trusted more than anyone, turned out to have a past she had kept secret. I stood there, dazed and trembling, not knowing how to face this truth. After hearing the whole truth from Dylan, I left the office in a complete daze. I drove home, my heart in turmoil, no longer able to think clearly. My hand gripped the steering wheel tightly, but my mind drifted in chaos. The images of Claire, the one I had believed in, the one I had tried my best to love and protect, were now shrouded in a veil of deceit. The feeling of pain and betrayal tightened my chest, making each breath heavy. When the car stopped in front of my house, I didn't know if I could face Claire. Everything became blurry in my mind, and I just stepped out of the car like a robot. She was waiting at the door, her face bright and relieved when she saw me come home. "You're back," Claire smiled, walking towards me as she always did, ready to hug me. I looked at her, my eyes dull, not knowing what to do. Her lies and her dark past still echoed in my mind. I walked over, hugged Claire superficially, no longer feeling the warmth or love I once felt. That hug had no meaning to me anymore. It was just a mechanical act, as if hiding the exhaustion that was gnawing at my heart. "I'm very tired," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I won't eat dinner. You eat alone." Claire seemed confused, her eyes worried as she released my arm. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" I didn't dare to meet her eyes, afraid that if I did, everything would break. I just shook my head, feeling my heart shatter and filled with contradictions. "No, I'm just tired," I repeated, trying to keep my voice normal, but I couldn't hide the emptiness. Without waiting for Claire to say anything more, I turned around, quickly walked into the bedroom, and closed the door behind me. I stood there in the darkness of the room, feeling like the space around me was suffocating me. The whole room, everything that once brought me a sense of warmth and peace, now only contained the pain of betrayal. I sat down on the bed, not knowing what to do next. I only knew that this marriage had been deeply hurt, and I didn't know if it could be healed. I sat silently in the darkness, the room devoid of light, devoid of sound, with only me facing the dull pain in my heart. The air became suffocating, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. But I didn't know how to dispel that heaviness. I wanted to run away from it all, from the painful truth that Dylan had revealed, but I couldn't. After a while, the bedroom door creaked open, and Claire walked in. She brought a glass of milk and a plate of cookies, a habit when I came home tired after a long day. But this time, she was surprised to see me sitting motionless in the dark, the lights off, silent. "Patrick? What's wrong?" Claire asked, her eyes full of worry as she turned on the light, illuminating the entire room. She set the glass of milk and the plate of cookies on the nightstand, walking closer to me. "Are you really tired? Or is something wrong?" she asked, her voice soft, but it felt like it was stuck in my throat. Seeing Claire standing there, my heart became more chaotic than ever. She was still acting like a caring and attentive wife, but now, all that image reminded me of the lie she had kept secret. I swallowed hard, looked into Claire's eyes, and couldn't help but ask the question that had been tormenting me since I left work. "Claire," I said softly, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "have you ever hidden anything else from me? Is there anything you haven't told me?" My question startled Claire slightly, but only for a moment. She chuckled, as if my question was of no concern, then shook her head. "No, Patrick, I haven't hidden anything from you. I've always been honest with you." Those words were like a punch to the gut. Bitterness welled up in my chest as I heard her affirm her honesty. I wanted to interrogate her, to expose everything, but I felt too weak to face the truth at this moment. The feeling of heaviness and exhaustion overwhelmed me like a blanket I couldn't escape. I just nodded, not saying anything more, then lay down on the bed. Turning my back to Claire, I heard Claire sigh, seemingly confused by my strange behavior. But she didn't say anything more. Maybe she thought I was really tired from work, or that I was facing some pressure. Claire sat silently for a while, then turned off the light and lay down beside me. But the distance between us seemed greater than ever. I drifted off to sleep, not because of a sense of peace, but because of the exhaustion and pain that had become too much to bear. Meanwhile, Claire, beside me, seemed to be still pondering, unaware that everything between us was slowly crumbling. The next morning, I woke up, but there was no sense of refreshment after sleep, just a lingering exhaustion. Throughout the night, I couldn't sleep soundly because of the terrible truth about Claire that I had discovered. My mind kept replaying the images and lies she had hidden for so long. Every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I was submerged in bitterness and betrayal. I glanced at Claire, seeing her lying peacefully, her eyes closed, her face looking so serene. The love I once held for her was now shrouded in emptiness and pain. Claire, the woman I once thought was my perfect soulmate, had turned out to be hiding an unacceptable past. Her tears and promises suddenly became deceitful, and I couldn't continue living with those lies. I sighed softly, got out of bed, and walked into the bathroom to take care of my personal hygiene. The cold water made me more alert, but it wasn't enough to dispel the pain in my heart. After a while, looking at myself in the mirror, I knew I couldn't prolong this any longer. I had made my decision. I couldn't continue living in the shell of a deceitful marriage. I needed to find a lawyer and end it all. It was painful, but I couldn't live with Claire anymore, not after knowing this cruel truth. Leaving the bathroom, I prepared for a new day. Claire was still asleep, But it didn't matter. I no longer wanted peaceful mornings with her. I wanted the truth, and the truth was that I couldn't forgive what she had done. That morning, after making my decision, I left home early to see a lawyer. On the way there, the feeling of emptiness and heaviness clung to me. I knew this was the necessary step, even though it meant giving up on the woman I once thought I would be with for life. At the lawyer's office, I explained my situation, feeling bitterness creep into every word I spoke. The lawyer listened attentively, then started giving instructions on the necessary procedures for filing for divorce. I couldn't believe that I was sitting here, discussing ending a marriage that I thought was perfect just a few months ago. We can proceed with the divorce quickly, but you need to prepare some personal documents and agreements regarding assets, child custody if applicable, the lawyer explained. If both parties agree, the process will be easier. I nodded. Everything sounded too real and detached from my turbulent emotions at this moment. I just want it to end as soon as possible, I said, trying to stay calm. There are no children or major joint assets, just the divorce papers. After completing the paperwork for divorce and clarifying the next steps, I returned home. On the way back, I wondered if I was being too abrupt, but my heart was drained of emotion, and Claire's betrayal was something I couldn't overcome. When I walked into the house, Claire was awake. She saw me, smiled, but her eyes held a hint of worry. "Where did you go so early?" "I didn't see you wake me up," she asked, her voice a little concerned. I shrugged, trying to act like it was nothing major. "I just went out to take care of a few things, nothing important," I replied, my voice calm, but my heart was screaming. The truth I was hiding was heavier than any words I could speak. Claire didn't ask anything more, just looked at me with a slightly confused expression. She didn't know that, in the next few days, our lives would change forever. I still tried to maintain my composure, but I had made up my mind. I couldn't continue this marriage, and Claire would soon know the truth. In the few days after meeting the lawyer, I tried my best to act normal around Claire. I smiled at her, ate dinner with her, but inside, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. The lies that Claire had hidden still haunted me, and every time I looked at her, I felt like I was living in a lie. During those days, I held back my emotions, but the inner pain couldn't be appeased. Until that afternoon, the doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, the lawyer walked in. He brought a thick envelope containing the prepared terms and divorce papers. I looked at the paper in my hand, feeling like all the heaviness of the past weeks suddenly became more concrete and clear than ever. Claire stood in the middle of the room, staring at the lawyer and me, her eyes revealing worry and panic. "Patrick, what's going on? Why is a lawyer here? Why are there divorce papers?" Her voice trembled, unable to believe what she was witnessing. "Everything's fine, right? What are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. I took the pen, silently signed the Party A portion of the divorce papers, feeling like my heart was closing a door that could never be opened again. Claire looked at me, frozen, her eyes wide with confusion, as if she couldn't believe what was happening before her. After signing, I put down the pen, my gaze fixed on Claire, feeling bitterness and pain suddenly welling up. "Claire," I said, my voice deep and controlled, "you've always lied to me. Ever since we met, you've never been honest with me about your past." Claire seemed frozen, unable to utter a word. What did I do wrong? What are you talking about?" she stammered, her eyes confused. I sneered, a bitter smile briefly appearing on my face. "You think I don't know? I know everything. Your past, the job you used to do. I know you're not the person you always portray yourself to be." Claire's face turned pale, her hands trembled, as if she had been hit by a huge mental blow. She took a step back, her voice lost. How did you know?" "Dylan, remember," I said, my voice calm but cold. "There was no real bullying in middle school. It was just your excuse to hide what you did and were doing. You were afraid I'd communicate with Dylan and expose your secret." Claire was stunned. All the truths she had tried to bury were now exposed. Her lips moved, as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't speak. The panic and shame were evident on her face, as if she hadn't expected her carefully concealed past to be revealed so cruelly. "Patrick, please, don't do this," she cried, her voice lost in despair. "I can explain." But I didn't want to hear any more explanations. "I'm tired. Claire, I can't live in this lie anymore. It's over between us." Claire stood there, shocked and desperate, not knowing what to do or say. She had never thought that her past, which she had tried to bury, could destroy everything like this. I turned away, walked out of the room, leaving behind her pleas, her tears, and everything that had once been love between us. I walked out of the room, leaving behind her pleas, her tears, and everything that had once been love between us. The door closed, a dry sound echoing like an end to this marriage. Without looking back, I walked away, feeling a mixture of relief and heaviness. Outside, a gentle breeze blew, carrying a hint of late afternoon chill. I stood still for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to let the swirling emotions in my heart settle. Over the past period, I had been tormented, wondering if I could forgive, but Claire's betrayal was too great, exceeding any limits I could bear. I loved her, there was no denying that, but love cannot exist without trust. Claire shattered that, piece by piece, until it all fell apart. I had tried, but this marriage had nothing left to save. Now I knew I had to move on. Even though it was painful, even though there were losses, I still had to find myself, a version of myself not trapped in deceit and disappointment. Claire, the one I thought I would be with forever, was now a part of the past that I needed to leave behind. In life, some relationships seem irreplaceable, but then they fade away with time, and I, even though I am still hurt, will stand up and move on. And so I left with a firm decision in my heart, knowing that I would find a new path, a different beginning, where trust and honesty would be respected. One chapter had closed, and I was ready to open a new page in my life.